Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. On this podcast, we go week to week, breaking down a streaming favorite, providing some context and some camaraderie along the way. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the premiere of Euphoria Season 3. Joining me for this conversation is Darren. Darren, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, Victor. Yeah, pumped for a new series. It's been very interesting to watch Euphoria last night and try to remember what's happened in the previous two seasons, which were all those years ago. But I won't spoil it. But I'll spoil it. I really enjoyed this episode. So yeah, it'll be fun to talk about.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I was so skeptical of this season. It's only 6 episodes. And this is almost, to me, like a reboot, and I'm just there for it. I think this is well done. They're just using the relationship we have with these characters as almost just types, and then they're putting it into a whole new context, and I'm here for it. I actually really did enjoy this as well. I don't know if it's good or not, but I did enjoy this episode for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good either, but it seems like it's 5 years after they finished high school or the last season, and they're thrown into a whole new set of situations. But the show is just so easy to watch, and it just keeps me entertained. There's just an energy about it that there's no slow spots. It just keeps moving, which I love.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the change they made to the music, because I'm sure you've heard a lot about what happened that in just the past few months for that. But we'll break down the episode, but a whole bunch of things to talk about before we get there. First of all, I'm just pounding these episodes out. We just published 2 days ago the penultimate coverage of the penultimate episode of The Pit, which is wrapping up this week. Of course, we just wrapped up Paradise a couple weeks back. Very popular here in the podcast. Wrapped up DTF St. Louis today, this very day. We just published that. And tonight, as soon as this conversation is over, Darren, I'll be publishing this. So just pounding them out. All these episodes, by the way, have been hugely popular. So the show has been very successful. Not as popular is Your Friends and Neighbors, surprisingly, considering how popular season 1 of that show was. So I want to kind of get your temperature on all of those, plus anything else you might have been watching in the interim since we talked 2 weeks ago. So yeah, where would you like to start with what you've been watching?
Well, I can tell you what I haven't been watching, and that's Your Friends and Neighbors yet, but it's on the list. And I haven't seen DTF, the finale, so I'm probably going to watch that as soon as possible after we finish recording today, because I'm really interested to see where that falls and to listen to you guys' conversation about that. But yeah, I gave you a whole list of what I have been watching. I reckon first I'm going to say that I finally caught up with the movie Sirat, which was nominated for one of the best foreign film Oscars. I think it was nominated. Yes, and yes, and what a film that is. I'm shocked by it. I'm still thinking about it. I think I'm going to be thinking about it for weeks. I think there's a lot of stuff I need to read about what that film means, and it affected me quite profoundly, I think, and just the way that it's not structured as a normal... Well, it's structured as a normal film. There's like a motivation at the start. A man's looking for his missing daughter, right, and then it turns into a road movie. But from the opening shots, you realize this is not a typical film that is going to have a resolution that you think is going to happen. Nothing happens in this film that you think is going to happen, and it surprised me 3 or 4 times and shocked me to my core, which I can't talk about it without spoiling it, so I'm not going to talk about it much further. But I just really love the vibe of it. I love the music, and I loved the characters. They seem to have no backstory whatsoever. You're just meeting them in the desert, and they don't seem like actors at all. They seem like real people who are just, you've found these people in the desert, and they listen to this music, and they are running from the world. And I only saw it yesterday, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But I think it's a really valuable piece of art.
Yeah, I have complicated feelings about the film, but overall, very interesting to say the least. I recommended it to you a while back when I saw it for the fact I thought that you might enjoy the musical aspects of the film, which takes place, just as context for the audience, that there's a father who's looking for his daughter. She's been on this, there's like these roaming nomads basically that are following this traveling DJ or some kind of it doesn't seem, I mean, I guess it seems to be, some of these seem to be like official concerts, but some of this just seem to be part of this lifestyle that they've taken on. And he's looking for his daughter. His son is with him, an even younger child with him. The daughter's probably like a teenager or maybe 20 or so. The son is maybe 13 or so. And they're looking for the daughter, and they falls in with these group of folks. And there's a strange dynamic that develops where at first they're kind of trying to shake them off, but eventually take them in or adopt them in a way. And but there is also something apocalyptic happening in the background. It seems like these people might be, dancing till the end of the world in a way. And we don't have any details specifically on what's happening, but we know it's pretty bad wherever it is back in Europe. So it is an interesting setup for the film. And I had joked with you that it's like, this could be a prequel to a Mad Max movie. Like maybe this is what happened 10 years before, the Road Warrior or something. And the not that you need to read it in those terms at all, but yeah, it's then it's just really this experiential being in the desert, listening to music, hanging with these people, like you mentioned, that some of them don't even seem to be maybe non-professional actors. And then we'd have to spoil things from that point on, which I recommend you don't spoil. We don't spoil, of course, as this becomes more available. I think it's going to be premiering on Hulu very soon, if it's not already available there. Definitely this month at some point before the end of the month. So do look for it. And it's a really interesting film. Definitely a conversation point. It is not an uplifting film in any way. But it is not necessarily as grim as you would think either, given the reality there. That seems to be some kind of embracing its own nihilism in a way, and it's without necessarily being as dark as that might sound. But it's a very interesting film, and definitely something to watch and discuss if you get a chance to.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those films that you're either going to get on its vibe and love it, right, or you're going to be like, what the hell is this? This is too slow. I'm not into it. I don't like the music. I don't like these characters. Enough. And if you're, and you will hate it if you're that type of person. But if you get on its vibe, I think there's so much in there for you.
Yeah, agreed. And you watched Bait, right, on Amazon Prime?
Bait was another series that I watched, yeah. So this is a series created by Riz Ahmed, the actor, I think.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of him from another HBO series called The Night Of.
So good, yeah.
Which is one of my favorite limited TV series ever. He is just so incredible as an actor in that series. And this is very different. And it's on Amazon, and he's an up-and-coming actor who's auditioning for the role of James Bond, but he carries with him this like weight of his Pakistani Islamic heritage. And it's. Did you finish watching it? Because I think I talked to you and you were halfway through it.
Yes, I haven't finished it. I've probably 3 or 4 episodes in, so I'm more than halfway, but I have not finished it. But I did find it to be very funny, and the setup is that he is in the running very loosely, like barely in the running to be the next James Bond. And he's trying to make this thing happen, like almost will it into being. And very funny just seeing his interactions with his family as people start to believe this, and how he keeps messing it up in the public eye. And of course, the racist reaction to it as well. So all of this is kind of encompassed in it. And I've been really much enjoying it. I just haven't had a chance to finish it. But these are short episodes. It's a pretty quick binge if you wanted to finish the whole thing off. But you did finish it. How do you think it, without spoiling anything, how do you think it lands?
It didn't land for me, to be honest. At the end, I felt like there could have been another episode or two to deal with the way that he evolves as a human, because he's a bit of a dick in his opening episode. Oh my God. He's not great with his family.
Yes. For sure.
He's not great with the public. He doesn't know what his persona is. And so when he understands how he's supposed to act in this world, it's super interesting. But I felt like there could have been an extra episode or two at the end, but still, like you say, quick binge and pretty entertaining, especially the first half.
And you said you saw Company Retreat. I also was recommended, by the way, Company Retreat by the folks we were staying with when we were in Florida. They had just watched it and they were recommending it to us as well. And I did see the first season of the Jury Duty with James Marsden, who's all over the place on this podcast, by the way. And but he was so much fun in that show, which was a real sleeper surprise hit on it was Freevee, I think it was called, like kind of the free ad supported version of Amazon Prime, which has just been merged into generic Amazon Prime. But now there's a new season of this. But this is not Jury Duty, right? This is a corporate retreat. And I have to tell you that, you know, I will definitely sample this now because it's been recommended multiple times by even by some people who've emailed me as well. But I got to say that as soon as it's not Jury Duty anymore, I was a little put off by whether this would work or not. But I am curious to sample it.
Yeah, I loved Jury Duty, and I really loved Company Retreat. I mean, we talk about casting in films and TV, and in this, they do a magic trick. They've got to cast actors to play roles for a week-long stint, pretty much 24/7, and then they have to cast someone who has to play with all these actors as himself, and that he doesn't know that it's a TV show. It is a magic trick, and they pull it off, and I think it's just stunning to me the way that they can get the crew and the actors and everyone in these situations, write scripts for someone that doesn't know it's a TV show. And they need him to make decisions at certain points in the storyline for it to work. I think it blows my mind, the level of organization they need to make this work. And it's kind of like a high wire act, and everything could fall apart at any moment. I just binged this show straight through. I thought it was hilariously funny. And it relies on the casting of the everyman, the person that doesn't know they're in this Truman Show. And they nailed it in Jury Duty, and they nail it here. He's just a lovely man, and he just works, and he becomes best friends with all these characters on this show. It's mind blowing. I think it's just super fun.
And you haven't had a chance to see Nirvana, the band, to show the movie, right? Yet?
Oh, I've sampled it. I've watched about half of it, and it's trippy, man.
I just was thinking about that with the whole, you know, the high wire act, literally in some cases, of you know, how did they make this movie or make this show? And that made me think of that very show film that I've recommended here on a podcast before. But yeah, we could talk about that one when actually let's not talk. We probably won't talk about it in detail, but I do think that will also be coming to Hulu soon. When that's available for everybody, I think this is going to be like a viral hit because everyone's going to be like, how did they make that movie? And then we can actually have a full spoiler conversation about it, because I definitely want to watch it again. I just really, one of the funniest movies I've seen in the past few years for sure is that Nirvana, the show, Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. That film just really made me laugh so many times.
Oh yeah, we were watching it late night a couple of nights ago, and yeah, we couldn't finish it, but I was just blown away by what they were doing.
Yeah, within 5 minutes, you're like, what? How did they do this? You know, it's so crazy, so crazy. And then, of course, later on, you're like, how did they get away with this later, making this movie at all? Considering they're like using some other person's IP. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Insane. And the creator of that, so you said you didn't like Blackberry. So the guy that's
Yes.
one of the main guys in the Nirvana, the band, is the creator of the movie Blackberry.
Right.
And he acts in it as well. He acts it and directs in it. And I thought he was supremely talented, and I thought that Blackberry really worked as a film, but obviously he's got greater talents and musical talents as well. So
yes,
it's good to watch that guy play.
Yeah, he's got a big project coming out now. It is what is it? He's doing the Sam Altman biopic, I think he's doing right now, which is, I'm sure, is going to be not a conventional film at all. I think I got that right, but. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what he does next. My issue with Blackberry, very minor digression here. I don't want to go into too much detail. I think it's a very well-made film, and I think the performances are interesting. I just think that it's totally fictionalized. That has like nothing to do with the actual Blackberry story. And for me, I'm like reading it as the, being familiar with the BlackBerry story and finding it a really interesting story about the hubris that takes a company down just in technology. I always find those type of stories really fascinating. That the way that they fictionalize the entire thing I just finished the film and I was like, to what point was it? Not that the moments of it aren't entertaining. I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Is how I felt, right? Like it's just, if they had been a more faithful version of the BlackBerry story, it would have been a more interesting and funny, honestly, story than what they came up with. So I was kind of like, I didn't hate it. I just, I gave it like 2.5 stars. I just kind of was scratching my head at all the, accolades that film got. But
I didn't realize they made it up.
Yeah, so much of it is made up. Yeah. But I mean, some of the stuff is true. The way that they came up with the way to sync the mail and stuff like that. Some of those things are actually true. The downfall of the film was kind of very silly what they came up with. And like I said, the cocky sense that these people thought that, well, they're never going to lose their market dominance and then lost it so quickly is really fascinating. And, it's kind of not at all the way it played out. So anyway, I kind of was just like, okay, that's not how I would tell that story, but it was well made. I thought it was well made. So.
Yep. Got it. Yep. Okay.
And, but this of course is like this particular film that I'm recommending. The Nirvana film is just a bunch of gags and they're so freaking funny. Oh, I watched a couple of things. So I saw a pizza movie on Hulu, by the way.
Yes, I saw the trailer to that. That looks pretty fun.
This is incredibly cheap movie. And I have to tell you, this is just the new stoner film that I don't think, at least I don't know that people still make these type of stoner films. And apparently they do. And if they do exist, I have not seen them in a while. And this one is in the 21 Jump Street movie. There is a drug that they take. And there's like an episode in the film in which like they're taking the drug and they have a shared hallucination. And of course, like you can see from the outside perspective that, people are just seeing what's actually happening, but they're inside of their shared hallucination. It's very funny. This is basically that for an entire film. And the gags are just nonstop. And it is very funny. I laughed a lot watching this film. And like this drug actually does have like supernatural powers. They branded it as a horror film. It's definitely not a horror film, but it has elements. There definitely are elements like horror visuals in it, but it plays with everything. It's talking about AI and psychedelics, and it's riffing off of all the stoner films you've seen in the past. And it was really funny. And it's just so many gags. And I'd say 80% of them worked for me. And but this is 3 gags a minute. So it's a pretty good batting average considering the amount that you're getting. And I liked it. I thought the energy was really high. And like I said, I haven't seen this stoner comedy in a long time. And I'm not always a huge fan of these, but I just laughed. And if you're looking for something silly and funny with a little bit of a sci-fi element to it, you can do a lot worse. So that's my mild recommendation for that film.
Yeah, awesome. That's on Hulu. I did see it pop up on my Disney Plus app, and I was like, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, I watched it on vacation because it was very convenient to watch, and that was it. While my daughter was sick, I was watching something while she was watching something else.
Yeah, I think my daughter saw it and she wanted to watch it, but I don't think it's for children.
No, no, I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend. I think if they're like 15, you're probably okay, but not younger than that. No, definitely not for my 10-year-old. Well, should be 11 and week. Actually, she's almost 11, so but still not 11 either. And I saw the drama. The speaking of Zendaya, we can use this as a segue into our conversation with Robert Pattinson, a film that's turning into a big hit. It's approaching $100 million worldwide. Another small film, an A24 film. This is from the guy who did Dream Scenario, and an interesting film. And the premise of this is that this couple is about to marry. They're preparing for their wedding. They're like on the eve of, maybe a couple of days away from their wedding. And it's all leading up. And they go out for dinner with their friends and they start going around a table saying, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, people, but they're just going to say, what's the worst thing you ever did? And one of the people, I won't even say who it is, one of the people admits to the worst thing that they ever did. And it is something that, once again, I won't spoil here. A lot of people have been saying, like, there's a twist in the film. It's not a twist in the film. This happens like 20 minutes in. It's the premise of the film. But you should go in cold. Don't spoil it for yourself. And it's one of those things that when you hear it, you're like, this could be bad, but it's not that bad, but it's pretty bad. And it could really reflect really negatively on that person. And then as they try to, the one person in the couple tries to rationalize, it's not that bad. But all the conversations they keep having about it, the explanation of it is worse than the initial admission of it. So it like makes you question. It's a really, I think that's the reason the movie has done so well. And it actually held up very well from week 1 to week 2. I think it's a conversation movie. Like you walk in as a couple and you're like, would you forgive that person? Is that forgivable? And I think that it's an interesting conversation point. And I think this is where I want to segue into our conversation about the film. There are very few people in this age group, this like under 30, under 35, that are true stars. And Robert Pattinson is one of those people. And Zendaya is definitely one of those people who can get a movie to $150 million for a movie where people are mostly talking, not a giant science fiction epic, although she has those as well. And, Spider-Man and Dune, etc. But she's one of the rare people. And this is like true star power. It's just like where people can just talk to each other and you are compelled by their presence. And I think that is kind of the selling point for Euphoria as well. But I do recommend the drama. It is probably going to be upsetting to some people in the audience, but it is interesting conversation. If you like to have a film that is kind of a very bizarre rom-com and is also edgy intentionally, they're definitely trying to push buttons. That's an interesting dynamic. If that sounds appealing to you, honestly, if Euphoria works for you, you're probably going to like this as well. Because Euphoria is another show that obviously is very intentionally pushing buttons at every chance it has.
Well, I never heard of this film until it came out, a week ago. And I saw, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. And I was like, and I've never seen Dream Scenario. I was like, why isn't this everywhere? And obviously it just took a week and all of a sudden it was everywhere and everyone's talking about it. So I'm so interested in what this revelation is at the start of the film, and my brain is going a little bit crazy thinking about what it could be. So yeah, I'm pretty keen to check it out. And yeah, $100 million, that's epic.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say to that is I don't want to oversell that aspect of it in the fact that that's the reason the reason I went to see it right away is because I wanted to know and I didn't want to have anyone spoil it for me. And what I would say is it's definitely, I want to sell it appropriately. It's definitely worth not spoiling it for you, but don't expect, oh my God, my brain was blown, right? You should not know, but I don't want people to think that there's going to be some kind of like the greatest twist of all times, because it's not even a twist. It's just kind of like it's like a cringe comedy. Oh my God, could I forgive my spouse for doing that? Like one of those type of things, right? And it's that it is bad, but I don't want to undersell it either. It's bad, but anyway, so it's definitely worth seeing and having a conversation about it. I think there's a lot of conversation about this film, which is part of the reason it's become so popular.
And
so good job on them.
Film,
good job on them for making a blockbuster out of a film that is just two people talking most of the time.
Yeah, A24, they're doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. And and produced. So this is the reason that you allow Ari Aster to continue to make movies that don't make money, because the films he's producing and these talent that he's bringing to A24 are making movies that do make money. All right. So speaking of the fact that we really don't have that many giant stars in this particular age range, amazing, incredible that Euphoria has launched Sydney Sweeney, Zendaya, Jacob Elordi, 3 huge stars, like 3 of the biggest stars of this cohort, period. And others too. You have, what's her name? I forget her name now. I got to pull up my IMDb.
Hunter Schafer.
Hunter Schafer, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Who's not in that A elite range, but obviously very recognizable character who's emerged. Maud Apatow has also become pretty prevalent. Of course,
And they've
Angus
had some-
Cloud, who unfortunately died before.
I was going to say they've had some bad luck as well with Angus Cloud
Sure.
and Eric Dane.
Yes. Eric Dane, interestingly, I didn't even realize this. He is in this third season because they shot all his scenes before he passed away. So interesting that he will be in this season of the show. I assumed he would not be in it.
Wow. Well, his episode last season, that standalone episode, I think his storyline ran throughout it, but there was one significant episode which
In
was
excess.
just mind-blowing with him. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that today, by the way, because when I was driving home from my daughter's soccer practice, In Excess was playing on the radio. And I thought, of course, having just seen Euphoria last night, I thought about that standalone, that flashback episode to Eric Dane's character's, his first, I guess, crush back in high school, all set to that whole entire album, that In Excess album.
Yeah. Great.
So an incredible, and of course, Coleman Domingo, who's also the profile. I can only imagine the ratings are going to be absolutely off the charts. All these people that we just listed are so much more famous than they were 4 years ago. So much more famous. They are some of the most famous people. You know, Coleman Domingo has had huge, like just not only 2 Academy Award nominations, but had a hugely popular Netflix miniseries last year and has popped up on other things as well. But everybody here, their profile is so much bigger, including, of course, Zendaya has been in the Dune films and is currently in a big movie in the movie theaters. Jacob Elordi's won an Academy Award or got an Academy Award nomination, has been in some very popular films, just had Wuthering Heights just recently, another giant blockbuster. And Sydney Sweeney, of course, and the very famous, the Housemaid made $400 million, $200 million per boob.
I gave them my money.
Someone was
that's
watching
coming
that
back
on the
as well.
airplane. Someone was watching that on the airplane, and I was like looking through the little space between it. I was like, I knew when that scene was coming.
That's one of my favorite things to do is just zone out on an airplane and watch what other people are watching without the sound.
By the way, my wife watched Train Dreams while I was watching The Housemaid through the crack in the thing. I was mostly sleeping, to be honest, but she watched Train Dreams, and of course, she was like a mess by the end, crying. Yes.
Great, excellent.
But she loved the films. Loved the film. Before we get into the breakdown of this particular episode, what I want to talk to you about is Euphoria in general and the whole Sam Levinson of it all. I started watching season 1 of Euphoria and I couldn't watch it. I thought it was like softcore pornography and it was titillation for titillation's sake. And in reality, we live in a world now where kids are abstaining from alcohol, abstaining from sex. They just announced that like teen pregnancies are at an all-time low again, like year after year breaking. There's a larger and larger percent of kids are going to college still being virgins still. And this is like kids, it's like a culture of abstinence. And yet this show was a simultaneously like a scared straight video for teens. And then, of course, the parents get to watch it. And I knew parents who watched it are just like, that's what kids are doing now. Can you believe it? Did you see Euphoria? That's what they're doing. And I'm like, that's not what they're doing, actually. And so I felt like it was cheap and titillating. And it was just being edgy for the sake of it. And I really didn't like it at all. And then I came back to it when season 1 wrapped up. I binged most of it. I caught up, I think, right before the season ended. I'm not even sure why I decided to go back and sample it again, but I really got won over by the show, primarily because I thought it was just extraordinary filmmaking. I mean, the scripts don't always make sense. The characters don't always make sense, but emotionally it made sense. I loved the vibes. The music was fantastic. The visuals, like just the visual language of the film and the experimentation of it, from a purely watching the show presenting something that was visually arresting throughout, I really got sucked into it. And I was really impressed. And I really wanted to see what Levinson was going to do. Not that impressed with his career overall, but I really was impressed with what he did with season 1 of the show. And I was won over. And I thought, my excuse in my own mind, and by the way, I was titillated by a lot of what was on screen. So that's obviously an aspect of it too. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, there was something interesting that if you kind of take it that this is just like a heightened version of being in high school, to a ridiculous extent, and also a very specific example of this addicted girl's life. A lot of kids probably have, to a lesser extent, are overachievers and are addicted to amphetamines or something to help them study. And this is like the most ridiculous heightened version of it that, at that age, everything is kind of ridiculous and heightened. So I kind of bought it as just kind of a crazy over the top fever dream version of being a teen. And I kind of loved season 1 of that show. Eventually, I got around to it eventually. But what's your experience of Euphoria? And were you always bought in on it, or did you have similar issues like I did as you were watching it?
Yeah, to be honest, it took me a while to get into it, but once I was into it, I just had to smash it out. There's a great tradition of 25 and 30-year-olds playing teenagers in the history of television, and this is just another one. It's kind of like Beverly Hills 90210, but just with all the drugs added. It's interesting the way that I wonder, does it have a young audience? Do young audiences, are they interested in watching it if they're not doing all these things? But I guess I'm interested. I'm not doing all these things and I'm interested in it. But yeah, like you, the music was just incredible. The way they used the artist Labyrinth, who I'd never heard of, and had his kind of main themes of his music all the way through the series was really well done. Just the kinetic energy of the camera work and the editing was just, it was like a Scorsese movie almost. It was just so full on. The visuals, which were super exciting to me. And yes, I'm sure it pushed the boundaries in kind of ways that are a bit crass, but I just love the kind of music video of it all. And yeah, the emotional kind of storylines really got to me in the end. And I felt like they sold a lot of it. A couple of the episodes that I really liked was after the first season, they had an episode, excuse me, with Zendaya and Coleman Domingo sitting in a diner. And they have this throughout the series because he's her sponsor, trying to help keep her sober, which is, it doesn't work. But I found that just so captivating, their conversations throughout a whole episode. Yeah, really fascinating. And obviously the actors have gone on to bigger and better things because they're all really, really good. Right. And it's great to see these craftspeople work like this. And the second season, I also really, really enjoyed. The music throughout is killer. Now tell me, you're saying that there's a change in composer. Is that what you're saying? I think I remember reading something about it. And so there's someone new for this third season. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story and a very, Levinson apparently has alienated himself from multiple people on the show, but still has a good relationship, seems to have a good relationship with Zendaya at least. And he has been bragging in many interviews, as he has wanted to do, that nobody was contractually obligated to come back for season 3. So of course, some people have not come back. Some people have died, unfortunately, but the people who came back all came back of their own will. I like how he has to point this out because he's been, he has a lot of bit of this reputation as well with The Idol, by the way. We could talk about The Idol a bit there too, if you want to. But as far as Labyrinth, so back in January, that Hans Zimmer and Labyrinth were composing music for season 3 together. And I'm not sure why he brought in Zimmer and he wasn't only working with Labyrinth, which of course was such a huge key aspect to the sound of the show. Maybe because it's become more of a Western now, which, I mean, that's my read of what we're seeing here, versus that kind of very much like a heightened high school setting for the first 2 seasons, and that very heavily gospel-inspired Labyrinth music, which is so tightly defines the feel of that first 2 seasons explicitly. And I loved it. Loved all that music, by the way. Listened to it even when I'm outside the context of the show itself. And then in January, just 2 months before this premiere, Labyrinth went on his, social medias and was like, F you, to the entire, and basically cut all ties with the show, and had a severe falling out specifically with Levinson. And by the way, Sam Levinson is Barry Levinson's son, by the way, the director of Rain Man, for anybody who wasn't aware.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the family there. But so he had a huge falling out in January, and all of his music was stripped out of the show. And they went with, I guess, versions of the music, because of course it was in collaboration with Zimmer, that he stripped out the music. And I haven't heard what Zimmer did to be able to score the entire show in such a short period of time. But I mean, there's been so many stories where Zimmer comes in anyway in the 11th hour to score an entire film in 6 hours before the movie's about to, like one of the films is about to come out and one of these giant blockbusters is about to come out. So Zimmer has a whole team of people behind him. So I'm sure they could have done it if they needed to in a pinch. But awkward that they were literally locking the soundtrack for the season after months of working together, and then they had to strip all the music out and start, not from scratch, because I'm sure there's versions of the music that Zimmer might have done that didn't have the collaboration with Labyrinth. But you already know from hearing this one episode that the sound of the show was already very different.
It's super different, and it definitely wasn't as kind of grabbing memorable is possibly the word. Yeah, it's quite amazing that someone could work on a project like that, and you've delivered the tapes, and then you can just go, no, I'm not in it anymore. I want my tapes back. Whether it's the fact they don't want to use his music because he's not on board, or whether they're just gone to Hans Zimmer, do whatever you like now. But I feel like they could have just used it. Interesting the way that the contracts would have worked, that he can just pull his music. I mean, where's that music go now? I mean, it's gone. It's a bit of a shame. But yeah, interesting to say that's a Western, whereas Labyrinth's music was really that urban environment. Right. And the party environment, and the kind of, as you say, the trials and tribulations of being a teen and working through all these heightened situations. Whereas this is set now 5 years later. They're not teenagers anymore. A couple are almost, they're planning a wedding. So yeah, it's a very different show. I finally picked the lady drug dealer, Rue's drug dealer. I finally picked her voice from Common Side Effects. It just made me feel so good to hear her voice. It's just so strange and brought me back to those animation shows that she's been in. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
She was also in Fallout, by the way, which I don't think you watched season 2 of Fallout all the way through, but she was a main character there as well, with a very distinctive voice, of course. And season 2, I thought season 2 wasn't as successful. I had even more mixed feelings about it, but I was eventually won over on that one. Mostly, I really liked the heavy giallo influence of the visuals in there. That it always felt like one of these Italian slashers was going to come into the room, like in one of those POV shots, and just start slashing everybody. So interesting that he shot the whole film like a slasher movie, but the whole series, I should say. And of course, there was no horror elements to it, but very interesting influence, and also the very weird, like red and blue color gradings on a lot of that. So again, it was just the visceral visual experience of watching the show, and the music. Again, great music for season 2 that kept me really engaged in that second season of the show, but not as successful as season 1. And honestly, when you saw them graduating at the end of that, and they talk about how they basically says, I never saw her again or something like that, which apparently is a lie because she's going to run into all these people again here. But it really felt like, okay, you could just end the show there. And then, of course, it dragged on for years that this thing kept getting delayed. There was the writer's strike. There was COVID. There was people behind the scenes died. People in front of the camera died. And everybody in the cast was incredibly busy making other movies. Eventually, they've all come back together to do this third season. And I was ready to just rip this to shreds last night when I went to watch it and make fun of it. And I enjoyed it. I felt that whole setup at the beginning where she gets stuck at the top of the fence trying to smuggle the drugs into the country. It was like something from a Breaking Bad episode, even with the style of it. This is shot in VistaVision, by the way, the same technology they used to shoot the One Battle After Another. So he got whatever he wanted to shoot this thing. It looks great. It looks incredible.
I was going to say, it reminded me of One Battle After Another. Sorry to interject, but just that sun-soaked desert and the kind of border patrol type aesthetic. Yeah, fully from that movie.
Yeah, a little Sicario, a little One Battle After Another for sure. And with shades of, Breaking Bad, but still like in a style of its own. And I kind of like the fact that it has nothing to do with the previous two seasons. Like I said, it's really just taking those characters and the archetypes of them, like the girl who marries the guy who she's supposed to fall in love with, and they don't live happily ever after. And the girl who's like really smart, but she's in with the drug dealers, or she's in the whole drug scene, but still trying to live in both worlds. Like, these are kind of archetypes we've seen before, and they're just using those and using the star power of the characters and just sticking them into this whole new world, basically. And you can go into this without having seen the first two seasons at all. And honestly, if anybody's doing that, I don't think you'll have a bad experience of watching this first episode of the show.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rue is thrown into a whole new situation. She's got a whole new group of friends, it seems, as dodgy as they may
friends, be. Quote unquote.
And then you've got, Jacob Elordi and Sydney Sweeney doing a little bit of kind of Technicolor, trying to be happy families in the suburbs, which is just never going to work. I thought the whole OnlyFans thing that they're doing doesn't seem super current. Feels like a couple years late, but maybe they'll twist that and do something interesting with that.
Yeah, well, I think that the thing I got from this thematically as well, and this is part of the reason I was kind of excited, it's only 6 episodes, which I think is as far as they could go to get this cast together to do this in that kind of time frame. So to have this very concentrated story, I think they have enough story to tell in a relatively short period of time. You have a wedding, which is always a great way to tie everything together. But this is, interestingly, not something, I don't think anyway, I never read those first 2 seasons of the show as having anything to do with being a critique of capitalism in any way. But I think that's very overtly what they're doing here, right? Like, they're talking about, in America, you just have to get rich. And no matter how you do it, it doesn't really matter. And you can be a drug mule. You can be an OnlyFans model. You can be pretending to be building this giant enterprise to trick people into investing in your real estate. You can be working at a strip club. Basically, everybody is a prostitute in this world that they've created. And I think that's what they're going to be exploring. And everybody is, specifically through Zendaya's character, Ruth's point of view, everybody has no actual grounding in anything. And she is looking for some kind of redemption. And interestingly, that she wants to surrender. That's, by the way, that's the third step in the 12 steps. The third step is that you need to surrender yourself to a greater power. So in a way, she is yearning for something to commit to, and remains to be seen of whether she's going to find anything that is a positive force or not. But, she's looking for God, literally, in this show. So it is interesting that the tension between this rootlessness and this overt critique of capitalism, and basically making fun of everybody who's hustling to matter. And we're all just basically prostitutes in the end. Some people here overtly sex workers, of course.
Very interesting. Yeah. And then they've got other characters they haven't brought into it. We haven't seen Hunter Schafer's character, Jules.
But we know has a sugar daddy, right? That's how she's subsidizing herself. So again, another form of sex work.
Yes. And also the Maddie character is like a social media type manager, or like a manager to the stars who not quite there yet, but dealing on the kind of lower end of it. So I'm Oh, I think her character, both of those characters who we didn't really see much of, are some of the most interesting characters on the show, I think, and I haven't really seen those actors pop up very many places other than those three stars. So yeah, I'm super interested in where this show goes. 6 episodes is easy, right?
Yeah, it should be a pretty easy binge. One thing we might sample this week, by the way, the very busy dance card this week, beyond the beef, if we can try to cover that. Maybe that'll be the focus. But going forward, starting this week, I'm just letting you know, there is a show that maybe Kim and I will be covering once the pit wraps up. It's a show called Margot Has Money Trouble. Have you heard about this show?
I have not heard about this, no.
It's based on a bestseller, and it stars Elle Fanning. And she is a college student who gets pregnant by her college professor, and she needs to support herself. So she turns to OnlyFans. So I didn't even think about this until I was planning the show, that maybe there's an overlap here in launching that show in tandem with the new season of Euphoria, which will be almost certainly be massive. Comes from David E. Kelley. I'm not a huge fan of David E. Kelley in general, who's married to Michelle Pfeiffer. But this is the first time Michelle Pfeiffer is starring in, she plays the mom, is starring in a David E. Kelley series. And the, what's his name? Nick, the guy from Parks and Recreation, the gruff guy, Nick
Offerman. I have seen something of this. Yeah, I saw something of this on television. I was like, Elle Fanning, great. And then seeing Michelle Pfeiffer, I was like, oh, I'm in. And then, of course, Nick Offerman is like, okay, this looks fascinating.
And that's the dad. And basically what the premise of the show is that she becomes famous on OnlyFans as a way to support her baby. And her parents, her dad, a former professional wrestler, and her mom, Michelle Pfeiffer, a former Hooters girl, instead of being like, this is terrible, they're like, this is the American dream. You can do it. And has been getting rave reviews, by the way, played at South by Southwest and premiering this week. But just a recommendation for maybe something you could watch with your wife if you guys are interested. But apparently it is like a very positive view of maybe the same story. And I have a feeling, given the first 2 seasons of Euphoria, that people will be, licking drugs off the floor of a dirty, scuzzy toilet on Euphoria at some point in the near future. And that is not going to be the tone of maybe a very similar story of the, this current hustle culture mentality on that show. So maybe an interesting, dual perspective on a similar storyline that audiences might want to explore. But we'll be watching it, and obviously just recommending that maybe you may want to explore that as well. But yeah, it is going back to just the idea that in this particular show, the whole Sydney Sweeney thing, based on the trailer they showed for next week, that it looks like as much as the Jacob Elordi, her fiance, is not interested in her doing this recordings of these sex acts for money, if that's what she's actually going to do, that there are versions of, she does talk about how there are people who make a lot of money on OnlyFans that don't actually even get naked. So, I mean, I'm not sure who would be paying for that, to be honest, but I guess it exists. And some of these highest paid models actually don't do anything too explicit, surprisingly. So maybe there's a version of that where it doesn't go bad. I have a feeling it is going to go bad. But I also have a feeling based on that trailer that he is not going to be so negative on this when the money starts rolling in, is what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I think there's a fetish out there for everybody. So there's someone willing to pay for anything. I think she needs a better videographer, though. I'm sure the housekeeper does a good job, but it's not very sexy.
By the way, given if that is her Instagram post, then why not put it on OnlyFans? that is really close to just being an OnlyFans content anyway. Her doggy play or whatever that is.
From what I know, and it's not much, I think you need to have everything, all the social media, and it all feeds towards the monetized feed, which you may or may not get more than what you're seeing out there for free anyway.
Darren, I just announced on the podcast that finally this week, because I have the week off, I will be launching the Patreon. Finally, I'm launching the Patreon. And next week, I'm launching the OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I'm waiting for. Oh, that's great news. Yeah, you've been seeding that for a while. So yeah, that's very interested to see how that evolves the podcast for sure. Great
Especially the
work.
OnlyFans content, but it'll be a whole different kind of podcast. No subscribers on that one, by the way. So what happens here, just to kind of break things down, we have Rue, of course, of course, the tone of Levinson's worst case scenario, always very intentionally pushing buttons. And this is how drugs are getting into America. The MAGA right's worst fears of drugs crossing the border from Mexico, and this wholly really grisly, showing how fentanyl crosses the line. There's a really good film called Maria Full of Grace. I think you've probably seen that, and which also deals with these drug mules who are, in that case, smuggling cocaine. They're very similar that we saw Rue here smuggling in these fentanyl bags.
I'm a massive fan of that film, and I definitely got the reference when she was trying to swallow those packets. That's straight out of that Maria Full of Grace film, which is just so good.
Oh, it's even worse, by the way. Like there is like a 3-minute sequence where it's just people gagging and shoving things down their throats. And again, there's probably people were probably triggered just from watching that segment of the episode, because that's just the subtle light touch that Sam Levinson brings to his films and TV shows. I also find it very funny that this is like how they present that this is how fentanyl gets into the country, when actually most of that fentanyl crosses the border with just a giant catapult and like a giant trash bag full of fentanyl with all those bags in it. And then with a GPS tracker in it, they just reclaim it on the other side. But this is the more grotesque way to represent it. So this is how they will do it, of course, because that's how Sam rolls. What did you think of the one thing I definitely want to touch on before we get to, I want to talk about Rue and this new career opportunity she has after accidentally. Is it accidental? That's the first question. Let me ask that question one thing at a time. So when Rue goes to that meet with this guy who she thinks might be God, because she's like desperately looking for God after having yet another restaurant meetup with the Coleman Domingo character, by the way, directly referencing the episode you mentioned earlier. Kind of a mirror to that particular episode of the show. What did you think of her showing up there and partying with the girls, and this guy kind of taking her under his wing, but then testing her with this apple on her head, shooting this apple off of her head, and she actually surrenders herself to the circumstance, and now apparently is going to be working for this guy. I'm not sure she's off the hook yet with her current drug dealer boss, but what'd you think about this whole sequence there at the strip club?
Yeah, I don't think she's ever going to be off the hook with the original drug dealer boss. I think that girl's going to be haunting her forever. I just love how Rue is just so open, wide-eyed. I just need to go to the toilet. But then obviously gets waylaid into this mansion full of strippers. The way that she is super attracted to these strippers, but also just the whole theme of it, she just loves the wealth and the fact that it's drugs mixing with sex, and it's everything that she shouldn't be doing, but she's right on board and she just wants to be there. Yeah, super, super fun. And she's just so, I mean, you can see her in a Spider-Man movie playing whatever, but she's just goes into this world and she just fits into this world. This Zendaya actress just can play just these, it's a grotty person, but it's also a wide-eyed innocent person that is just up for anything. I think is really fun. She's not going to get shot by the gun with the apple on the head, but it still was really interesting to watch and just to see how she reacts, and just the almost the euphoria of her as she falls to her knees laughing because she's got out of this situation. It's just thrilling.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's such an amazing scene, and what makes the show feel I was going to say real in its own bizarre universe, but exactly that. There are other programs I've watched where Your Friends and Neighbors, for example, in this very season, just some really silly things that happen, but it's like such a grounded version of reality that when something just slightly off kilter happens, you are just like what the hell is going on here? And it just takes me out of it, and I just don't buy the situation at all. This film, this series is so over the top from moment one that they throw you into this very, heightened world that they're in. And it works for that reason. But more importantly, like you said, that scene where he shoots the apple off of her head, her reaction of like the tears coming down her face, and then like the terror that turns into hysterical laughter is like so like such an incredible choice in that moment, that whether she came up with it as an improvisation or whether it's in the script, whatever, it just feels earned in that moment. You just buy this whole ridiculous situation at that moment. And I just thought it was a great scene, honestly, a really great scene.
And I love just the way he's standing there in his like leopard print undies with his gut out, and he's got his like bodyguard. I love the bodyguard or the head of security, whatever that guy, his right hand man. I love that guy. I don't know what he's been in, but he's just this just stoic look. He's seen it all. Just great. It just does remind me of that Paul Thomas Anderson movie somehow. Maybe Boogie Nights, that kind of reminded me of like the drug dealer kind of face off they have in that. But yeah, it's just fun filmmaking. And you're right, it is earned. That is earned, her reaction, and that's gonna kind of bond her to this guy for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I've seen this guy before, this his right-hand man, where have I seen him before? I've definitely seen him in something. I got to see if I can identify. I might have seen him in. Oh, We Own the City. That's what it was. Did you see that miniseries on HBO? I
saw the first episode. That's all.
That's what he was, one of the crooked cops. That's what I recognize him from. By the way, the other guy who's in the hot tub most of this time is Marshawn Lynch, who has become the NFL player who's he's been popped up in a bunch of things and is usually very, very funny. So can't wait to see him if they give him more screen time here on the show. Did you ever see Bottoms? He was like the gym teacher in Bottoms.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and this actor who played Alamo Brown, very funny as well. And obviously he's going to be a very big part of this season of the show. They did let her live after that was the question I was going to ask you. So one of the girls gets ODs on fentanyl. You guys, you got to have Narcan at the strip club, all right, guys? Come on, get with the program.
That was the girl that she helped, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, right? And then when she's bringing the drugs to the place, the guy who hands her the drugs, there's just a look that passes between him and the girlfriend. Do you think this was an accidental overdose, or are they trying to kill the girls? What do you think?
Interesting. I didn't pick up the look, but the guy that's in the security room who has the money and switches I don't know. He looks a bit dodgy, to be honest. I just assumed that it's the lady drug dealer is giving them stuff that's a bit too strong to try to break them down a bit, but I have no motivation for that whatsoever. So yeah, don't know.
Seems like a very bad idea to do that. I mean, you don't kill off your clients. You try not to do that, I'd hope.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not confident in that at all.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was some intention there, but it seemed like a very bad idea if that was the case. Oh, and then one last thing I want to mention. There's actually a couple more things I want to mention, but one more in the strip club. I do, again, this is very much a Levinson thing. I do find it very funny where there is this preachiness to the tone of the show. For example, where in the earlier seasons, it'll be like, isn't it terrible that this person is exploiting this underage child, basically, in the world of Euphoria? Meanwhile, the show is like titillating us with images of these naked, children. Of course, the actors are not children, but I'm just saying that that's the context we're watching them in. And I'm just like, it is doing both things at the same time. And the same thing happens here, where it's like, there is a commentary on the commodification of these women have to show their bodies. And literally it's like, take off your top. But the filmmaker is like, take your top off now. Without any irony at all, which is kind of just the tone of this show in general. I mean, I think about that even more overtly in The Idol, for example, which is about like the exploitation of that, and then without any irony at all, the characters arguably there have been a lot of behind the scenes stories about how a lot of those cast members felt kind of abused by the making of that show. So it's interesting that, it didn't be making a criticism of the behavior that you yourself are maybe partaking in. But I guess that is just part of this bizarre recipe of the show.
That is bizarre.
Yeah,
I did like when Rue, when she was kind of confronted in the office and she kept talking about high school and being a high school girl, what happened in high school, and the boss is looking to his other mate and they're like, what is she talking about? We don't want any high schoolers here. I did quite like that they were trying to draw a line between the high school Euphoria and now this is the strip club. You got to be over 18. You got to they don't want any part of that, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, and the last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is, of course, there's a whole separate storyline that Rue is still friends with some of the people she went to school with. The Maud Apatow character, who is Sharon Stone's personal assistant, but is actually giving production notes, and so seems to be like slyly working her way into maybe being a producer or something, having some real power in her position, even though she's really just carrying coffee around. But the head of the studio is asking her opinion on production notes. So an interesting, obviously there's something happening there. And as you mentioned already, that the Nate's ex-girlfriend, who's still very, apparently in the next episode, is still like best friends with Sydney Sweeney's character, despite everything that happened between them. And she's managing this child actor. And of course, that is going to allow them to both be in each other's orbits, but of course intersect with the overall story. So tenuous that Rue is still friends with her, so they can bring this aspect of Hollywood criticism into it as well. Nothing really critical of Hollywood yet, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be, just as ugly as all these other aspects of the story going forward. But what do you think about them like bringing in this kind of Hollywood side of and how they might tie that into what else is happening on the show?
Yeah, well, what better way to show the commodification is bringing the Hollywood machine. I love seeing Sharon Stone. I didn't know she was in this, so it was great when she popped up. I think she's always fun to see on screen. Maud Apatow is also really great, and that whole second series of Euphoria was kind of based around the writing of her play.
Right.
So she's obviously got the chops in terms of how to kind of show dramatic things, and her role as an assistant is obviously she's going to go through up the ladder pretty quickly because of her skills in that. But yeah, I don't know how they're going to mix it all in to Rue being the madam of a strip club out in the
exactly
out in a border town. But I'm for it. Why not?
It's all happening in California, so I guess, they're close enough to each other. But yeah, I'm not sure how they'll tie this together other than she's just visiting her friend every once in a while. I have to assume that things will become more tightly together. Oh, by the way, Angus Cloud's character survives on the show, her ex, because he was, he's in prison right now, right? So the character survived, although unfortunately Angus did die of a drug overdose.
Poor old Fez, yeah, it's just a throwaway line. He's spending 30 years in prison after that bizarre gunfight, which came out of nowhere, I thought, from last season.
An insane gunfight. That another like bravura sequence and like absolutely bananas. But that's a perfect example, by the way, of season 2 of the show, which did seem to be all over the place and not tying things together. Although the characters were actually pretty tightly tied together, surprisingly, given how all over the place the show was. But that whole scene, the whole shootout, is absolutely astonishing filmmaking. But it is, it's just showing off, honestly. But it's still an incredible set piece, right? So
I appreciated it. Yeah, he can show off anytime he wants, as long as it's not with the idol.
All right, one more thing I want to bring up briefly before we wrap up, which is the one more actor who has broken out from this series, not as much as some of the ones we've just mentioned. And I don't know if he will be back in this season of the show. He might come back, and I'm just not aware of it. But it's Austin Abrams, who was in the play, in Maud Apatow's play last season, and was like this kind of nerdy guy that, became a bigger part of the show in season 2 for sure. but had a huge breakout year last year. He was very funny in Wolves, the kid who supposedly overdosed, but actually was still alive. If you watched that movie. Of course, he was in Weapons as the drug addicted kid.
He was that guy in Weapons. Yeah,
yes,
I thought I recognized his face.
And Darren, this year, he is the star of Zach Cregger's next film, which is his reimagination of Resident Evil. And by the way, this is why I wanted to bring this up. He's the star of it, so he's definitely above the titles in this one. Like, it's his first chance to really break out. But they've been having secret screenings of this movie. And the words coming out of this, the early reviews that critics have seen it, and one of the critics that on Letterboxd that I was reading called it the Mad Max Fury Roads of horror movies, and says that it is like one of the most astonishing technical achievements of film in the last few years. And it's only 90 minutes long. Those are two magical words for me to hear, two magical phrases.
Bring it on. How good does that sound?
Watch it for 90 minutes and then rewind it and watch it again.
I did hear that Zach Cregger has never seen any of the Resident Evil films, but he's just a massive fan of the games. And that's a real good little note that this Austin Abrams guy is the lead in that, because I loved him in Weapons. And just thinking of him in the last season of Euphoria, he was great. He was with that Barbie Ferreira's character. They were kind of a bit of a couple there, and that was very memorable, their relationship.
Speaking of Barbie Ferreira, have you had any interest, or has it been released in Australia at all, this new Faces of Death movie? Has that come out?
I don't think it, maybe it's been released, but I've heard lots of stuff about it, but I don't have any relationship to the original, so it's kind of gone over my head a little bit.
Well, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with the original, but it has a very talented filmmaker directing it, which is part of the reason I've been interested in it. The reviews have been mixed, positive, but the director, this is the guy who did How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which was a very highly regarded film that came out a couple of years ago. So interesting that he goes and makes a Faces of Death remake, but it has nothing to do, very loosely, based on the concept of Faces of Death. It's not like Faces of Death, which is a bunch of fake documentary footage, if you've ever seen that film, which I don't recommend, by the way. Don't watch it. It's terrible. But, interesting that that's his next move. So I was more interested in the filmmaker itself, but just curious to know if you had heard about it. And Barbie Ferreira is the star of that film. The Austin Abrams, another thing he has coming out this summer, by the way, is Whale Fall. Have you heard of this? This is a guy who gets swallowed by a whale, and the whole movie is him inside the whale trying to get out. Anyway, he's also starring in that film, which apparently is supposed to be a big film. This
genius idea. I think I have heard of that idea, but I haven't heard of the film.
Yep.
That sounds astonishing.
So yeah, it'll be a big year for him for sure, no doubt. All right, Darren, anything else you wanted to mention on the episode before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered quite a lot this episode. I think we've covered pretty much everything that I've seen lately. So yeah, it's been good to chat to you again after a week off, and I've got a few more things on my card now. So we've got Beef, and
Margot Has Money Trouble.
Margot Has Money Troubles. Yeah, I think those two are the ones that I'm going to be looking out for.
Yeah, so check that one out, and maybe it will tie in with our conversation on Euphoria going forward. And and check out Beef. I think next week, we'll probably spend a little bit of time on Euphoria, unless something really earth-shattering happens. We'd probably just briefly cover episode 2. And we probably will stick with the show throughout, considering it's only 6 episodes long, and then talk about other things along the way, like we did here. But yeah, try to check out, not all, I mean, if you can, watch all of Beef, but Kim and I will be watching it, and maybe we can figure out the technical. You start thinking about the logistics of seeing if we could get the wives on a 4-way conversation, at least for part of the conversation, before things go totally derail themselves. But maybe we do half an hour alone, half an hour with the wives, and talk about Beef. And I might rewatch Beef season 1, because I loved season 1, and it is a pretty quick binge, half-hour episode. So I might do it. I might just start watching tonight and wrap the whole thing up in the next couple of nights.
Oh, it's so good. If you can get through it emotionally, I mean, yeah, it's such a ride, isn't it?
And incredible needle drops, by the way. Great soundtrack. Speaking of great music supervision on a show, I can't wait to hear what they come up with season 2.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, can't wait. And that's comes out as a
Thursday.
binge really soon, does it?
Thursday.
Okay,
Thursday.
awesome.
I mean, Thursday, you guys are ahead of us. I'm always forgetting. Are you, what day is it for you right now? It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday morning.
Tuesday
Yeah.
morning. Yeah. So you're ahead. I always forget if you're ahead or behind. So it's Tuesday morning for you guys. That would be your Friday morning. So actually, no. So it's like midnight Thursday at midnight.
I try to do this, Victor, and some shows come out at midday for us. Some come out at 8 a.m. and then some I have to wait till like 4 p.m. for some reason. So yeah, I'm going to watch it when I can.
Well, no, I was just going to say that it is, if you wanted to binge it with your wife. I don't know if it's a vacation week. Is this a vacation week for you guys?
It actually is. So that could be quite a fun day.
That's what I was going to say, because I think it's Friday at 12. So Friday noon, you guys can binge. It's 3 hours to binge the whole thing. You guys can watch it while you have lunch or something.
Yeah, that's doable. Yeah, okay. I'll float it. See, I'll put it in with the communications manager and see if we can
and Thursday, by the way, Thursday's my wife's day off. So we can binge it. Same thing. We can binge it an hour lunch schedule because it'll premiere our morning. So we can watch it like in the afternoon, and you can watch it with your wife on your Friday morning, and then we can have a conversation about it on Monday or Tuesday, whatever it is, for depending on where we're in, what time zone we're in.
Yeah.
All right.
So many
thank you again.
Cheers,
so many time zones.
Thanks so much. Good chatting.
Yep. And enjoy your vacation, and finish Nirvana, the movie, the show, the band, the whatever, and finish that too.
Yes. Yes.
A real blast as well.
Awesome. Plenty of homework, and it's all enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Have a great one.
Thanks, mate. Bye.